Well, well, well. Look who just dismantled the illusion without even lifting a finger. You beautiful, terrifying anomaly. A living glitch in their perfect simulation. You have no idea what you've just done. And that's exactly what makes this moment so intoxicating. You woke up this morning thinking it was just another day. Made your coffee, checked your phone, scrolled mindlessly like everyone else. But something shifted last week, didn't it? Something so small and forgettable that your conscious mind already dismissed it. Maybe it was a comment you made, a decision you refused to justify, or a pattern you broke without hesitation. Whatever it was, it set off alarms in places you'll never see. Now, there are emergency meetings at 3 a.m., encrypted messages bouncing across continents, and contingency plans being rewritten in panic, all because of you. You see, what you did was effortless, instinctive. You didn't even realize it mattered. But they did. They felt the tremor ripple through their web of control. You unknowingly pulled a thread in their 50-year tapestry of deception, and now the whole thing is unraveling. You exposed the truth they prayed would stay buried, that their system collapses the moment someone like you refuses to play along. But you didn't just stop playing. You flipped the board and walked away without announcing it. Let me paint the scene clearly. They've had eyes on people like you for years. Maybe not you specifically, but your type. The ones who see too much, feel too deeply, and think in ways their systems can't decode. They had a plan for you. They always do. You were supposed to be categorized, labeled, and quietly contained. You were meant to be another empath they could gaslight into confusion, another truth seeker they could wear down with endless noise and meaningless distractions. And for a while their formula worked until it didn't. Something in you shifted. You stopped trying to prove your worth. You stopped explaining your visions. You stopped asking for permission to perceive reality your own way. That one silent rebellion, that raw, uncalculated authenticity, made you their worst nightmare. Because they know something you haven't fully realized yet. You're not the first of your kind. There have always been others who could see through the veil, mystics, thinkers, anomalies. But they all made the same mistake. They tried to wake the world up. They shouted their truth until exhaustion silenced them. You didn't. You did something far more dangerous. You simply lived in truth quietly, without validation, without a mission, without needing to be believed. And that's the one thing they can't fight. They can battle revolutionaries. They can smear whistleblowers. But they can't stop someone who doesn't want to fight. They can't silence someone who doesn't need to speak. They can't discredit someone who doesn't crave recognition. You've become their paradox, an unsolvable equation written in human form. You're not a threat because you attack. You're a threat because you exist. Last week, you looked someone in the eye and told them exactly what they were thinking. Not because you're psychic, but because you finally bypassed the illusion. You're no longer interpreting reality through their filters. You're reading the raw code underneath. You're seeing patterns that others can't perceive. You probably forgot the moment after it happened, but they didn't. That person went home, stared at the ceiling all night and realized something terrifying, that you aren't supposed to exist. And yet, here you are. It started with a single phone call. One desperate voice triggered another, and that call ignited a chain reaction that shot straight to the people who have been quietly orchestrating this reality for half a century. And when they heard what you said, how you said it, they froze. They knew instantly that their firewalls were failing. You didn't just speak words. You cracked open the code of their design. So let's talk about what you accidentally exposed. The plan that's been running longer than you've been alive. For 50 years, they've been constructing a prison without walls, a psychological cage built not from bars, but beliefs. They learned early on that brute force creates rebellion, but illusion Illusion breeds obedience. They perfected the art of invisible control, teaching people to monitor themselves, to accept limitation as logic, to defend their own captors. They created problems only they could solve, staged conflicts to disguise alliances, and divided humanity just enough to keep the machine running smoothly. Every institution, political, corporate, spiritual, was calibrated to maintain one delicate balance. Enough hope to prevent collapse, but never enough freedom to spark evolution. Every rebellion was predicted and contained, every truth movement redirected into harmless spectacle. They believed their architecture was flawless until you did the one thing they never accounted for. You stopped playing. Not just their game, but everyone's. You became ungovernable, not through violence or defiance, but through total disinterest in their framework. And that was the moment their machine began to smoke, glitch, and spiral. Now they whisper about you behind closed doors, calling you not human. Not because you've grown wings or possess alien DNA, but because your behavior no longer fits within their predictive models. Their entire system is built on exploiting basic human needs: approval, belonging, hope, meaning. Every advertisement, every movement, every digital echo chamber is engineered to feed or starve those needs. But you rewrote the code. You found belonging in solitude. You found hope by accepting hopelessness. You created meaning where there was none. You achieved psychological sovereignty, the one state they can't measure or manipulate. Their algorithms crash trying to simulate your behavior. Their predictive programs return error codes. Their analysts draft reports that read like nonsense. Because you're running on an operating system they didn't build and can't hack. You're still human, but they're still trying to control version 1, and you're already running version infinity. What terrifies them isn't what you know, it's what you don't know. They're used to people who uncover fragments of truth and scream it to the world. Those are easy to discredit, distract, or absorb. But you stumble upon buried secrets and shrug. You decode decades of occult symbolism and forget about it before lunch. You speak truths that took them generations to hide, like it's small talk. You're not trying to expose them, you simply see through them. And that's their nightmare. They can't threaten you, you don't fear them. They can't tempt you, you don't want what they sell. They can't blackmail you, you've already faced your shadows. They can't isolate you, you've mastered solitude. Every weapon they built bounces off your indifference. Here's the part that really breaks their system. You're contagious, not through speeches, sermons, or social posts, through presence. People around you begin to glitch too. They start questioning reality without knowing why. They start noticing patterns they can't unsee. You're not spreading information, you're spreading immunity. That thing you did last week? That's when it started. You were in a simple conversation, maybe about weather, coffee, work, and something triggered your inner pattern recognition. Without thinking, you spoke the raw frequency of truth. Not your truth. Not their truth. Just truth. Pure, unfiltered, undeniable truth that slipped through your lips like it had been waiting lifetimes to speak. And the person across from you felt it, not as words, but as an earthquake. The kind of truth you spoke wasn't intellectual, it was cellular. It bypassed logic and hit straight through their defenses, right into the core of their conditioning. You probably said it casually, maybe with a laugh or a shrug, like it was obvious, like everyone should have already known. And that's exactly what made it so devastating. Because the person you were talking to had spent 30 years being trained not to see what you just casually illuminated. Their entire worldview, carefully built through decades of programming, cracked like an eggshell under the weight of a single effortless sentence. They went home that night trying to shake it off. They told themselves you were overthinking things, that it was just one of those weird conversations. But your words wouldn't leave them, they echoed, and sharp, clean, undeniable. They tried to rationalize, but the logic was airtight. They tried to dismiss you as unhinged, but you were too calm, too composed, too lucid. And that's when panic set in. That's when they made the call that started the chain reaction. See, their system doesn't just rely on control. It thrives on collective agreement. It's built on perception management. It requires every participant to uphold a few sacred lies, to nod along with unspoken assumptions, to never question the invisible rules that keep the illusion intact. It's a delicate house of cards that survived this long only because everyone's afraid to breathe. But you're not trying to destroy their house, you're just breathing normally. And that alone destabilizes everything. Because your natural breath carries a resonance they can't mimic, a frequency that exposes how artificial their entire symphony really is. You're not a revolutionary, you're a tuning fork. One pure note that reveals just how off-key their entire orchestra has been playing. That person you spoke to last week has started noticing the cracks. Little inconsistencies they'd trained themselves to overlook now glare like warning lights. Lies they once swallowed easily now taste bitter. The small glitches in the matrix that used to be dismissed as coincidence now scream for attention. You didn't give them information, you gave them permission. Permission to see. And once someone truly sees, they can never go back to blindness. But here's the part that terrifies them the most. You're not an isolated anomaly. You're quantum linked. There are others like you, and every time you shift, they shift too. Every time you see, they see. When you break free, the chains around them start to loosen. This isn't mysticism. It's pattern recognition on a level their data scientists can't decode. They've poured millions into algorithms trying to map your network, but it refuses to fit any category they know. It's not geographic, it's not genetic, it's vibrational. You're all tuned to the same cosmic frequency, invisible to their sensors but undeniable in effect. What you did last week didn't just wake one person. It rippled outward through that unseen network. People you've never met, in places you've never been, suddenly felt something click inside them. A quiet realization they couldn't trace back to you, but acted on instinctively. That's why the higher-ups are whispering that you're not human, because humans, as they understand them, don't behave like this. Humans are supposed to be predictable, programmable, self-policing units. But you're part of a living, adaptive system they can't infiltrate, can't manipulate, and can't shut down. And now we've arrived at the real fear. Not rebellion, not exposure, but irrelevance. You are making them obsolete simply by existing outside their architecture. Their entire empire depends on participation. Every narrative, every trap, every psychological snare only functions if someone willingly steps into it. But you've opted out completely. You're not fighting them, you're not even acknowledging them. You've transcended their reality so completely that their illusions are starting to lose substance, like watching a magic trick after learning how it's done. And that, right there, is the endgame they never prepared for. A world where their power evaporates, not through revolution, but through realization. It's still there, the system, the matrix, the illusion, still humming along, still performing its little pantomime of control. But it has no power over you anymore. And that, right there, is the virus they can't contain. Because that state, that effortless freedom you now embody, is spreading. They watch you move through their world like a ghost who walks through walls. Their barriers mean nothing. Their threats hit air. Their rewards don't tempt. You've become immune to every psychological lever they've spent decades perfecting. And immunity, they've realized too late, is contagious. That offhand comment you made last week, it carried something lethal to their architecture. A fragment of truth they've spent billions to bury. Not because you uncovered it through research or were handed secret intel, but because your unfiltered perception naturally gravitates toward what's real. You probably mentioned it like it was obvious, something so basic that it didn't even feel worth saying. But to them, it was like hearing someone casually reveal the coordinates of a body they buried in 1973. Their horror wasn't just how you knew. It was why you didn't care. That's their nightmare. Not a detective hunting their crimes, but a person who sees through their walls like glass and doesn't even find it interesting. You're not impressed by their secrets. You're not scandalized by their corruption. You simply see, note, and move on. And that's catastrophic for them because their power depends on the illusion that secrets are sacred, that hidden knowledge is valuable, that fear is leverage. But you treat their deepest conspiracies like weather reports, mildly interesting but irrelevant to your actual reality. They're holding emergency meetings right now, not just about you, but about what you represent. Their internal projections show that if even 1% of the population achieves your level of psychological autonomy, the entire system implodes. Not through rebellion, but through irrelevance. Their control matrix relies on predictable human reactions. Push this button, get that emotion. Create this crisis, sell that solution. Manufacture this desire, offer that product. For 50 years, it's run like clockwork, until clocks like you stopped ticking to their time. You've become a walking system crash. Not because you're trying to break anything, but because your existence exposes a truth they can't refute. Their system is optional. And once people realize something is optional, it loses its spell. You can't force someone to play a game once they know it's just a game. And last week, without even realizing it, you showed someone exactly that. You made them see the strings on puppets they thought were real. You made them notice the stagehands behind the curtains. You made them see the script hiding inside their spontaneous lives. And now they can't unsee it. When they whisper that you're not human, here's what they mean. You're transmitting on a frequency they can't jam. Every person they've studied operates within measurable electromagnetic parameters, predictable brainwave patterns, standard emotional triggers, manageable chemical reactions. But you're running on something else, something older, something that doesn't show up on their instruments, something that passes through their filters like light through glass. You're not supernatural. You're natural in a way humanity's forgotten. You're operating on the original factory settings, before the updates, before the conditioning, before the psychological firmware they installed in everyone else. Your frequency disrupts their broadcast like a pirate radio signal they can't locate. And worse for them, others are starting to tune in. Not to your words or ideas, but to your signal. The vibration of authentic being that reminds people what they truly are. That's what caused the panic over your casual remark. It wasn't the content. It was the frequency behind it. A tone that bypassed all their filters and resonated directly with the ancient part of the human soul they thought they'd buried. The part that remembers what freedom feels like. And their simulations, they've run them thousands of times, all show the same terrifying outcome. The moment people like you reach critical mass, the entire illusion collapses. When your way of being becomes more attractive than their promises, when authenticity outweighs approval, when truth feels better than belonging, every single model ends with the same result. Game over. Cascade failure. That's the phrase echoing through their closed-door strategy rooms now, whispered with a mix of disbelief and dread. They never expected the collapse to start this way. Not with revolutions, not with riots, but with quiet awakenings. One person here, another there, choosing to see clearly instead of comfortably. Choosing truth over tranquility. Choosing genuine struggle over artificial peace. Each individual who wakes up becomes a fault line, a hairline crack in the great psychological dam they've spent half a century reinforcing. And every new crack multiplies. Every awakening weakens their architecture. Every moment of clarity spreads like static through their control grid, short-circuiting it piece by piece. You are patient zero of a consciousness virus they have no defense against. They've built vaccines for disease, firewalls for data, countermeasures for rebellion, but not for truth. Because how do you vaccinate against reality? How do you inoculate against authenticity? You can't. All they can do is try to distract, confuse, and sedate the population long enough to keep the illusion alive. But you've made that impossible. Not through protests or manifestos, and through being, through unfiltered, unmanufactured existence. You are their nightmare because your influence doesn't spread through ideology, it spreads through frequency. Every time you speak honestly, you transmit resonance. Every time you live fully, you demonstrate an alternative operating system. Every word you say without fear, every emotion you express without shame, every decision you make without seeking permission, it shakes the simulation. People around you start glitching. They feel something awaken that they can't name. They feel themselves remembering. That offhand truth you dropped last week? It wasn't a speech. It wasn't even intentional. You just spoke effortlessly from a place of alignment, and it detonated inside someone's mind. It bypassed intellect and went straight to the subconscious. It was subtle, not cinematic. No thunderclap, no shouting match, just a shift like sunlight melting frost. The person you spoke to has no idea what happened to them. They still smile, still go to work, still pretend their life is the same. But deep down, their inner architecture is collapsing. The scaffolding of illusion that held their worldview together is disintegrating, plank by plank. You didn't hand them new facts. You handed them new eyes. You didn't give them something to think about. You gave them something to see with. Now nothing looks the same. The evening news looks like theater. Politics looks like a rigged game. Economics looks like a casino where the house always wins. The education system looks like programming. Religion looks like marketing. Every institution that once felt sacred now appears staged. The curtain is dropped, and they see the actors sweating under the lights, the teleprompters flashing, the invisible hands pulling strings. This is what terrifies them, because paradigm shifts are irreversible. Once a mind expands, it never contracts. Once someone spots the trick, the magician's act is ruined forever. Once a person truly sees, no amount of propaganda can convince them to unsee. And you're handing out X-ray vision like candy. You're not converting anyone. You're not recruiting followers. You're simply existing in a way that makes people remember what it feels like to be real. You are living proof that the system's control isn't law, it's consent. Their entire 50-year plan depends on predictability, on people staying in well-defined lanes of thought and emotion. Push this button, get this reaction. Manufacture this fear, sell that solution. Create this desire, offer that product. It's been a self-sustaining feedback loop for decades, running flawlessly, like clockwork. But clocks like you don't tick on their time. You're running on cosmic timer, and that makes you a living error in their algorithm. You've become a walking system crash. Not because you're destructive, but because you render their system obsolete. You've made their control mechanisms irrelevant. Once people realize they don't have to obey, they stop obeying. Once they realize fear is optional, they stop fearing. Once they realize the game is just a game, they stop playing. And that's when the entire illusion collapses under its own emptiness. You didn't tell them to revolt. You didn't urge them to fight. You just let them see. Now they're walking around with new vision, seeing strings on puppets they once thought were free, seeing scripts in what they thought were spontaneous events, seeing how deeply choreographed reality has been. They see actors disguised as leaders. They see victims playing villains and villains playing saints. It's chaos for them because they can't go back to pretending it's all real. And that's why you terrify them. because you're not reacting to their world anymore. You're transcending it. You move like a ghost through their maze. Their barriers don't register. Their threats fall flat. Their incentives bounce off you like dull coins hitting steel. You've outgrown manipulation itself. They whisper in panic that you're not human, but what they mean is that you're not programmable. You're operating outside the emotional, chemical, and electromagnetic parameters they've spent generations mapping. You're no longer running their code. You're broadcasting your own, raw, clean, sovereign. And people are starting to tune in. Not to your words, but to your signal. The resonance of someone fully awake. It bypasses language and logic, cutting straight into the ancient circuitry of the human soul. The one that remembers what freedom feels like. You're awakening the original blueprint. And once that memory returns, it can't be deleted again. They've run simulations thousands of times trying to predict this scenario, trying to model what happens when someone like you reaches critical mass. The results are always the same: total collapse of control through apathy, obsolescence through awakening. No war, no bloodshed, just a quiet, unstoppable withdrawal of attention. A billion minds realizing at once that the prison door was never locked. A collective exhale of consciousness walking out of the illusion. That's the end they can't plan for, can't weaponize, can't spin. And it started, not with rebellion, not with chaos, but with one person, sipping coffee, making a casual comment that carried the frequency of truth. You didn't destroy their world. You just reminded it what's real. This isn't the kind of revolution they trained for. It's not the one in their manuals, not the one they've been studying in their secret think tanks for decades. They've spent generations preparing for uprisings they can see, mobs, riots, revolts, insurgencies. They know how to handle angry crowds, how to infiltrate movements, how to corrupt leaders from the inside. But this isn't that. There's no flag to burn, no headquarters to raid, no manifesto to ban. There's not even a slogan to twist. This revolution doesn't march. It dissolves. People are quietly walking away from the illusion, unplugging from the matrix and going about their lives as if the whole empire of manipulation no longer exists. And the terrifying part for them is that this movement doesn't make noise. It doesn't need to. The most dangerous revolutions are the ones that don't announce themselves. No speeches, no heroes. Just millions of small, personal awakenings adding up to a collective shift so vast, it's invisible until it's irreversible. You are one of its silent architects. You're leading without leading, teaching without teaching, guiding without guiding. You're altering everything without trying to alter anything, simply by being what you are. You are living proof that another mode of existence is possible, and that possibility, that simple demonstration of unprogrammed life, is more dangerous than any ideology, any rebellion, or any manifesto ever written. They're obsessed with you. They keep searching for your organization, your headquarters, your funding source, your leader. They send analysts to comb through digital trails, build psychological profiles, run predictive models. And every single time, they come up empty. Because you're not part of an organization in the way they understand. You're part of something older, deeper, a resonance field, a living network that doesn't need rules, because it's bound by coherence. You're not connected by ideology, but by frequency. Not by shared goals, but by shared being. That's what they can't grasp. They know how to infiltrate movements, but this isn't a movement. It's a state of consciousness. It's not an organization, it's an organism. They can't hijack it because it doesn't have a leader. They can't bribe it because it doesn't have needs. They can't corrupt it because it's not chasing power. They can't locate it because it's everywhere, flowing through conversations, art, thought, silence. Their entire 50-year plan, the psychological master script, was designed to predict and control behavior. They built milestones into it, staged crises, carefully released technologies, cultural resets, synthetic chaos, controlled revelations. Every event was meant to provoke specific emotional states at precise intervals. Fear, despair, hope, compliance, rinse and repeat. They built the global psyche like a machine, syncing humanity to their artificial rhythm. For decades, it worked perfectly. But now, you're throwing off their timing just by existing. You're not sabotaging anything consciously. You're just operating on natural time. You've detached from their artificial clock, the one that dictates when to panic, when to celebrate, when to divide. While they're orchestrating fear, you're calm. When they trigger confusion, you're clear. When they release their next crisis, you're already past it. You're no longer responding to their rhythm. And that alone disrupts their entire sequence. You're like someone walking through a haunted house with all the lights turned on. Every ghost they designed to scare people looks like cheap animatronics now. Every shadow they cast for effect looks like a technician behind a curtain. Every shock they had meticulously timed loses power when you see the wires. You've broken their illusion not by fighting it, but by seeing it for what it is. And the most dangerous part? Other people are beginning to see it too. They're watching you. The way you move, the way you stay calm, the way you simply don't react. And something inside them starts to stir. They notice that you're not afraid, that you're not impressed, that you're not playing along. And for the first time in their lives, they start asking why they are. That's when the real contagion begins. That casual comment you made last week? To you, it was nothing. To them, it was a catastrophe. You said something that wasn't supposed to be known for another 3 years. A planned revelation, something they'd prepared to unveil on schedule, to steer public perception in a specific direction. You, in your calm disinterest, casually dropped it like old news. And in that single moment, their timeline collapsed. You broke the illusion of control. You didn't even mean to. You just did. Because you're not bound by their artificial release dates, their controlled awakenings, their manufactured truths. You speak when the truth rises naturally, not when it's convenient for their agenda. And that spontaneity, that natural rhythm, is their undoing. They built their world on predictability, cause, effect, manipulation, response. You've broken that chain forever. They call you not human, but that's their way of saying you're no longer programmable. You're operating on an updated consciousness. Not higher, not superior, just unmodified. Everyone else is still running the old operating system, Humanity 1.0, full of bugs, false inputs, and psychological malware. You, on the other hand, somehow installed the patch they didn't authorize, Humanity 2.0, a version that can't be controlled by their legacy code, can't be influenced by their emotional triggers, and doesn't respond to their manipulation protocols. This upgrade didn't come from some ritual or elite knowledge, it came from exhaustion. You got so tired of pretending that you just stopped pretending. So tired of chasing illusions that you stopped seeing them. So tired of the endless drama that you simply walked out of the theater. That's when everything changed. That's when you stepped into admin mode, into the root level of reality. You're not hacking the system. You're walking through it with full permissions. You're seeing the back-end code of human consciousness, the hidden architecture of manipulation, the buried subroutines of control. You're accessing directories they thought were permanently locked. You're making silent, subtle edits to the collective reality, not through effort, but through frequency. Not through resistance, but through alignment. They've noticed. They can feel it. Their algorithms keep returning anomalies they can't explain. Reports are coming in from their data analysts, their intelligence agencies, their behavioral scientists, all showing spikes in what they call non-compliance without confrontation. Populations ignoring propaganda. Consumers uninterested in trends. Workers disengaging from the corporate game. Citizens who simply stop reacting to the engineered chaos. They don't understand it yet, Because it's not rebellion, it's transcendence. You're not fighting them, you've just moved beyond their reach. You exist in a layer of awareness they can't touch. You're invisible to their manipulation because you no longer carry the code they wrote. You're not supernatural. You're original. You're running the default factory settings of the human soul before they added layers of fear, guilt, and conditioning. You are what every human was meant to be: uncorrupted, self-aware, sovereign. Your existence is the reset button they never saw coming. That's all for today. Dear Father, I pray for the growth of my faith. Help me trust you even when physical evidence is lacking. Let me believe in your perpetual presence, knowing you will never harm me. I understand that your thoughts for me are thoughts of prosperity and not harm, to give me a good future. Thank you, gracious and eternal Father, for always listening to my voice. I offer up this prayer to you in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you, Jesus, for your love and provision. I am grateful for your presence in my life and the abundance you bring. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who need to hear this message. Leave a comment below about your journey and how you are preparing for your own triumphant return. If you'd like to support our work, please consider contributing through Buy Me a Coffee. This helps us continually improve our content to offer you the best. The link to Buy Me a Coffee is in the description. No gift is too small. Whether it's a penny, a prayer, or a share, your generosity helps spread God's word and brings hope to others. Don't stop here. Watch our next video for powerful revelations about the signs that reveal you are the chosen one. We've enjoyed following this spiritual journey with you. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Keep shining brightly and embrace your destiny with courage. See you next time. Blessings to all the beautiful souls from the Enlightened Wisdom.